start filming? Okay.
What is my opener? Break up with your chocolate chip cookie recipe? You've got a new one in town?
Yes, that's great.
Everything about this cookie is extra. We are so excited for this recipe of the year because we have been working on this for probably over 2 years in our test kitchen. It is our super-sized, super soft chocolate chip cookies. They use Tangzhong, which is a technique usually reserved for bread, but we're using bread flour plus this technique to give them this incredible texture. You get crispy edges with a soft center. There's chopped chocolate, there's all brown sugar, no white sugar at all, plus nutty brown butter to make these cookies super complex. It takes a little bit more time to start the process and get to the finish line, but it's so worth it. The final cookie is more flavorful and delicious than anything you've ever had before. You have to try it. Let me show you how easy this is to bring together. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure out my light brown sugar, and this is 2 cups or 426 grams. And you want to use light brown sugar here so that the flavor isn't too molassesy or dark. So I just added the salt. This dough has a really nice level of saltiness to it, and I'm just going to set that aside. I have my unsalted butter. This is 2 sticks or 226 grams, and I'm going to add it to my pot on the stove, and we're going to brown it. So while the butter melts, let's talk about why we take the time to brown the butter, because it does take maybe 5 extra minutes, but it is so worth it for the additional flavor. So butter is made up of fat, milk solids, plus some water. And by cooking it down slowly over heat, we evaporate or cook off the water. So what's left behind is that fat and the milk solids. And the milk solids start to toast over the heat. And that is those golden brown bits that we start to see at the bottom of the pot. It makes these cookies taste even more buttery and delicious. It adds a really nice complex nutty flavor. It's so good. This looks perfect. The brown bits are nicely toasted. For me, this is an ideal level of toastiness. It is a dark brown, but it's not burned. If you want a little bit less flavor, you could brown the butter slightly less. And if you over brown your butter and it gets a little bit darker than that, that's okay. It'll just be even more flavor. So while the butter is still hot, you want to pour it over the brown sugar and salt mixture immediately. And the heat from this melted butter will start to melt the brown sugar. And then using a whisk, you'll want to combine that hot melted butter and the brown sugar. It may stay slightly clumpy, that's okay. You're just trying to evenly distribute the butter. So the next step is to make our Tangzhong starter, and this is what makes the cookies super soft and have that really unique texture, and it takes 3, maybe 4 minutes. So in the same pot that we browned our butter, you don't even need to wash it out. I'm going to combine some milk and flour. So I'm measuring out 23 grams of bread flour, and I'm going to add that to the pot with 113 grams or half a cup of milk. Use whole milk if you can. It's a little bit more flavorful because it has a little extra fat in it. And I am combining my bread flour right into the pot. I will turn up the heat to medium and immediately start to whisk and combine the milk and the flour to try to eliminate any lumps. Once the mixture looks smooth, you can switch to a flexible spatula and just make sure that you're scraping the bottom so that this is evenly cooking. It will start to thicken. It will start to look like a paste. You'll see lines form where you're stirring in the bottom of the pot. And if you're making something like milk bread, you're probably doing the same process of making a Tangzhong starter. But for these cookies, you want to cook this mixture even a little bit more than you would for milk bread. And the reason why is because it helps control the spread of the cookies and gives them that really nice height and this texture. So we went past the state where it looked like paste and cooked it to the point where it almost looks like mashed potatoes. So then I'll immediately transfer the Tangzhong starter to our bowl with the butter and sugar. And the heat from the starter will melt the sugar even further. So now I'll use my whisk to combine the starter and the brown sugar. And you might want to panic at this moment because it's going to look a little bit chunky. It's not going to look like cookie dough, and you're going to wonder if this is really going to work. And then there will be this magical moment where the sugar melts and it turns into this beautiful, silky, velvety looking mixture that's almost like caramel colored. So just keep whisking. It's okay if there's a couple lumps of the Tangzhong starter, that will cook out. And give it a vigorous whisk to combine. And just like that, it transforms into this luscious mixture. Okay, now we're going to add our cold eggs. They're right from the refrigerator, and because they're cold, it will help cool down this really hot mixture. So I'm adding my 2 eggs. And now I am going to add 1 full tablespoon of pure vanilla extract. That's a lot of vanilla, but it really gives these cookies a complex, delicious flavor and aroma. And then whisk to combine. Once it looks smooth, you can set it aside and measure out your dry ingredients. Now we're going to combine our dry ingredients and finish up this dough. So I'm going to measure out the rest of my bread flour, which is just over 2.5 cups or 307 grams. And then to my flour, I'm going to add both baking powder and baking soda, and this will make our cookies puff and spread the right amount. Then I'll add this right to our bowl of butter and brown sugar, eggs, and vanilla. One of the things I love about this recipe is that it doesn't require really any special equipment. We're mostly just mixing in this one bowl with a whisk. So at first, this mixture will look pretty floury, and it might look like it's not combining, but just have some patience, stir for 20 or 30 seconds with your whisk, and the flour will start to become absorbed into the mixture. It'll start to smooth out, and there shouldn't be any dry, floury streaks. This looks great. So because the dough is really soft at this point, we're going to chill it in the fridge for about 10 to 15 minutes while we talk about ingredients and chop our chocolate. That way the dough won't melt the chocolate when we're adding it in. If you're a gluten-free baker, you are in luck because we now have a gluten-free bread flour, which works beautifully in a simple 1-for-1 sub for the regular bread flour in the recipe. All you have to do is just press the cookie dough down a little bit before baking to make sure that they spread nicely. And there you have it, gluten-free, supersized, super soft chocolate chip cookies. Now let's talk about chocolate. These are chocolate chip cookies, but we're actually not using chocolate chips. And this was a really purposeful decision that we made. We love using wafers or really bar chocolate and chopping it. When you chop your chocolate, you get these irregular sizes. You get some pockets that are really chocolatey and melty. You get some of these shards that distribute throughout the dough, and it's just a really wonderful eating experience. So chop your chocolate. It's worth it. Even if you start with chocolate chips, still chop them to get some of that textural experience. When it comes to the actual kind of chocolate, we chose semi-sweet chocolate. This is a 61% cocoa content, which means that it's not too sweet, it has some complex flavors to it. It really pairs well with the slightly sweet dough. If you're a dark chocolate fan or you know that you like chocolate that's a little bit more bitter, use your favorite chocolate or a bittersweet chocolate. We like something around the 72% cocoa, and we suggest replacing up to half of the chocolate with bittersweet. So do yourself a favor, use a little combo, bittersweet, semi-sweet, and tailor your chocolate balance just the way that you like it. So almost all the wafers are chopped at least in half. If you find any that are still whole, just snap them in half. And now we can add them to our cooled cookie dough. It's been chilling for about 10 minutes, so the chocolate won't melt when we fold it in. I'll go get the dough. So our dough has chilled. It's not stiff yet, it's just not hot. That way our chocolate won't melt when I add it in. So transfer all your chocolate to the dough. A bowl scraper is a really helpful tool for this here. And then just use a flexible spatula to fold the chocolate in. This is a really satisfying step to see the dough come together and incorporate all the chocolate. The next step of the recipe is debatably the most difficult part. It's waiting. So this dough needs to rest in the fridge for 24 to 72 hours, so that's at least 1 day up to 3 days. The flavors really intensify, the sugars melt, the texture becomes really wonderful. You get these slightly crispy edges and a soft middle. So at this point, you could just cover your dough or transfer it to a container with a lid. I'm going to do that so that it fits nicely in my fridge, and then we'll let it rest. If you absolutely cannot wait to have cookies, you could put this dough in a 9x13 pan right now, bake it off, and have cookie bars. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. It's not as impressive looking as the supersized, super soft cookies that will bake off, but if you need cookies right away, make the cookie bars and you won't be disappointed. So I'm going to cover my dough and put it in the fridge for 24 to 72 hours to let those flavors intensify. And in the meantime, let me show you what those cookie bars look like if you just can't wait. So if you bake your dough right away, this is the beautiful cookie bar that you'll get. It has that really beautiful shiny crust that really good brownies have. And you can see that there's chocolate in every single bite. The texture of these bars is super soft. You don't quite get the crispy edges that you get with the full-size cookies, but if you are someone who loves really soft, tender cookies, you'll love these bars. Back to our dough. So our dough has been chilling for 72 hours and it's ready to scoop. If you know that you don't like scooping hard cookie dough, put this out on your counter to warm up slightly for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So I am going to scoop our cookies with our scone and muffin scoop, which is about 1/4 cup. These are big cookies. We call them supersized for a reason. If you don't have a scoop, you can measure them out by weight, and each cookie should be about 85 to 90 grams per cookie. I am going to make them look perfectly round by just giving them a quick roll between the palms of my hands before we put them in the oven. This will make sure they have a really symmetrical, professional looking appearance. So these supersized cookies are ready for the oven. It's preheated to 350 degrees and they'll take about 18 to 20 minutes. We're looking for them to be just golden brown around the edges and look set in the center. Off to the oven. So our cookies are out of the oven and they're looking incredible. So to tell when they're done, you want to make sure that the edges have just a little bit of golden brown color, the centers look set. I can see there's some chocolatey bits on the top that are nice and shiny. They just look so delicious. I've been waiting all day to eat these cookies. I'm going to get a giant glass of milk to go with my supersized cookies. We'll plate these up and then we'll taste them. Does this cookie look good? It's finally taste test time. I've got my giant mug of milk. We're going for a dip. I cannot wait to taste these cookies. They're I'm speechless. I can't even talk. These are perfect cookies for dunking in milk because they soak up just a little bit. They're so flavorful. The nutty brown butter. Oh my God. This texture is unreal. These are honestly the best chocolate chip cookies I've ever had. They have so much flavor. The chocolate is complex. The dough is really well flavored with brown butter. The texture is super soft. I love soft cookies, but even if you don't, you might like this. It's entirely different than anything you've ever had. Put aside grandma's recipe for a minute, give it a try. You will be so glad you did. You have to make our recipe of the year, supersized, super soft chocolate chip cookies. Give it a bake, review it, tell us what you think, and enjoy. You're just gonna be so happy when you eat these. Happy baking. It's so good.